Welcome to Well Good Movies, the podcast that gives you the movies well worth watching, even if there are some duds along the way. Combining questions, trivia, and games, every episode we're challenged to watch a piece of film history to decide whether it deserves to be remembered for all time in our movie vault. With every film chosen in our previous episode, it's the perfect way to watch and discuss along at home. But don't just take my word for it. Here's a snippet of what to expect in today's episode.
Also, fun fact, I've met Ben Whishaw a couple of times in London. Very lovely fella, really nice person.
So what life aspect did he help you out with?
Oh, to be fair, we were smoking and he gave me a light.
If Paddington actually did that, I'd be impressed. That would be
just
crazy.
somebody tried to light it. It's like, here you go.
Yeah.
Mr. Brown doesn't think I have this.
All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Are you not entertained? Great Scott! I'll be back. Here's Johnny. Oh, hi, Mark.
They call me Mr. Tibbs.
I'm Batman.
It's not the car. It's a silly little and my pretty.
To infinity and beyond.
You're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
Well, good movies.
Hello and welcome to Well Good Movies, the podcast that gives you the movies well worth watching, even if there are some bumps along the way. I'm your host, David Osger, and I'm joined by my friends, Knuckles McGinty, Fibs, Spoons, Jimmy the Snitch, T-Bone, The Professor, Squeaky Pete, Double Bass Bob, Farmer Jack, Mad Dog, Sir Geoffrey Wilcott, Johnny Cashpoint, Charlie Rumble, and Craig McDonald.
Hello, lads.
How are you, Craig?
Yeah, I'm doing well. How are you? It's interesting to be back.
Yeah, you brought an entire group of people with you. What have you got yourself into?
Right, you can go now, lads. Thank you.
So, yep, we're back after our summer break, Craig, and we've had some space in between to sort of chill out, catch up on cinema going, and yeah, just enjoy the summer. So, how have things been? Have you enjoyed our break?
Yeah, I mean, it's very much needed. I mean, I was in Croatia for a week and a half, so very much I managed to finally get there despite the weird bus issues that I had before with the last episode.
Just to kind of close that story arc for people at home.
Yeah, David was able to throw me at an airport and then just leave me there. I managed to somehow get about 24 bottles of Ribena into the country. David asked me, do I need to take it through customs? Why?
Again, it's a bit like marmalade or something like that. Just having your essentials with you.
Oh, can you imagine if I was just got over there and somebody happened to have a load of black currants and I just become this... Honestly, that entire thing just felt like it was trying to be a Breaking Bad parody without being a Breaking Bad parody.
Just you having a giant hat with a bottle perfectly placed inside there.
That I just inflate
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously we've recently there's been quite a few re-releases recently. There's been a few summer films that are the last of all the sort of blockbusters that were coming out. Yeah, so it's been good to sort of have I know myself, there was some sort of catch-up days at the cinema where we both got to go. There's also times in which I went to see things I'd never seen before, which are old movies.
Yeah, you went on a massive James Bond sort of spree.
Yeah. I started with GoldenEye, and I was just I got to see out the Pierce Brosnan era. Ironically, though, didn't finish that because I just didn't have the time to see Die Another Day, which I think some people would just be like, oh, you didn't miss anything. But still, it would have been nice to complete them, seeing them all in the cinema, but...
Yeah, and we also didn't get a chance to, well, I don't know about you, continue on with the watching of the original Star Trek movies in cinemas.
I did see Wrath of Khan, to be fair, I did see that. And my consensus was that, I'm not going to suggest this now, but I think the original Star Trek should be in the movie vault, which I think you'll disagree with.
No, shut up.
But Wrath of Khan is in there, but I thought the first film was fascinating. So yeah, if that ever comes
I'm
up
sorry,
again,
David, you're a meth head for thinking this kind of thing.
That's it's the typical film though that shows that divide with us. It's the kind of goes back to years ago when with Birdman, why I thought that should be Oscar winning material. I'm just there looking at the filmmaker side of me, and you're just no, that's not good enough.
Yeah, I think you credit way too much in ambition as opposed to actual execution.
Pretty much. Yeah, so it's been a good summer catch up, and I think hopefully I'm still yeah, I'm not sure if there's as many screenings now, but there was like screenings of Jaws in like IMAX and 3D, and I was kind of like, maybe I can see both, maybe I can compare them. I know you compared subbed and dubbed versions of anime as well.
Oh yeah, in a single day, I went to see the brand new Dragon Ball Super film, both first in the subbed and then in the dub. I had a free day. I wanted to see what the comparisons are like. Yeah, I had a great time.
Well, our usual sort of format would be to sort of tell people about the movie we're talking about today. But again, as we've had this break and we've got like returning guests from last time, is this kind of like a two-parter. I'll go straight to our guests because we can kind of catch up with them as well. So let's introduce who's joining us today. So first of all, we've got Jamie Milligan, who is joining us once again. He talked to us all about the first Paddington film, and he is here to discuss the second with us. Jamie, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back on.
No, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, especially when the second Paddington was such an elephant in the room in the first podcast.
Exactly, yeah.
Good to finally be able to talk about it.
Yeah, I think that was just like fate, like telling us something. It was just like, you can't talk about this film, and it was like, this film is going to become even more relevant in a few weeks' time. It's just like, oh God, what's going to happen? So we'll get on to that. But yeah, like I said to Craig, and where we've been talking about the cinema and what we've been doing over the summer. I know for yourself as well, you've been sort of catching up on a lot of movies, etc. lately. So yeah, what have you been watching?
Yeah, well, I discovered Letterboxd like earlier this year, and kind of now just trying to like keep up with that. So I went to cinema the other day to see Hit the Road, the Iranian kind of comedy drama, which, yeah, it was just everything. It felt a little bit like a Robert Altman, kind of just how it's playing with audio and just so many kind of conversations going on at once, which I just really liked. And yeah, and I watched Sanjit Ray's Big City today as well, which was really, really good. And then Austin Powers' The Spy Who Shagged Me, which, again, it's a broad church, but it didn't hold up as well as I thought it did. Spy Who Shagged Me, weirdly. The first one's definitely the better of the trilogy. But yeah, so quite eclectic.
Austin Powers recently to me was kind of like showed how things like physical media and stuff are changing. Like I had emails being like, oh, buy like the Austin Powers Blu-ray or something box set, and it was like in this special thing which like folded out with all flowers and stuff, and it was like in the same like email in which the shop was being like, oh, Top Gun Maverick, own it in this special collector's edition, Casablanca in this special thing. It was all like these re-releases, and I was like, this is what this is now. This isn't just like, we'll sell you a bunch of DVDs. It was like, oh no, you have to spend like £50 to get this like collector's version of Austin Powers in which you get all three films together, etc.
It's so weird. I've got no like special collector's things of any DVDs. I've got lots of DVDs. I've a few Criterions, but the best one I've got is Assassination of Jesse James, which is like a book with the info, which was like 15 quid in old money. I don't know, like with the inflation, it's probably £1,000 now. But yeah, it's really, really nice. And, my partner laments that I've got so many DVDs, but I do just love just owning it and knowing that it's always there.
Yeah. So some of the collector's ones, they're a bit interesting. I think there's been quite a few examples in the past of where it's like a character's head or something, or like this giant like box, and you're just like, how would you keep that somewhere? But yeah, like when it's just something subtle like a book or something, it's a very nice addition. But yeah, right. Well, we'll get onto your thoughts about today's film, Jamie. As you mentioned there, it's been a long time coming, as it was the film that couldn't be mentioned before. But also joining us for this episode wasn't on our last episode. We have our resident film brain. It is Stefanos Florakis. Hello, Stefanos.
I mean, you could say I've been here so long. I should start getting some money. I mean, some kind of payment.
If I've not been paid for this, like hell are you?
I did say the other day, I was just like, oh, we need to get you your cinema ticket for the Endgame win. And I was like, but the problem is you signed up to all the memberships of all the cinemas. So I was like, oh, I know, Everyman. And then you saw like really perked up. And I was just like, oh, maybe I need to check the Everyman tickets, how much are these worth actually.
So back to that, because it's been so long since then, does it come with interest? So can I be like from a ticket to a membership, maybe? Just bring a lawyer for this.
It's like JV said. It's just like what was originally a £6 cinema ticket is now worth like £1,000 or something. Like that's how much has changed.
I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything.
get a
You said it
house.
on the record.
Good luck forcing us to anything legally on that.
So, Stefanos, it's been a bit longer since you last joined us. I believe it was Akira when we were last talking to you. But obviously, still, summer is a big time for the movies. And I know you're always one to sort of catch the latest releases, but also like TV series, etc. So, what has stood out for you the past few weeks?
In all honesty, this summer, it seems it went too fast, but also seemed very long. I don't know if that is something due to the pandemic. Probably the pandemic has given me this sort of like idea that time is very fluent, but also eternal. And yeah, and I did watch several things, not a lot, mainly because of work. Also, finally, after 2 years of the pandemic, I actually got COVID in July. And
Oh, damn.
yeah, I know. It's so unlucky. After all these years of being very careful, I got it while visiting my parents in Greece. So my holiday sort of became just me isolating over actually doing anything. With that said, I am very happy for a lot of shows that I managed to watch. And I did not expect Top Gun Maverick to be the film it is right now, the kind of phenomenon it has become. And I've seen it 3 times now, and I'd never expected to watch that film so many times. Also, I do highly recommend it if there is somewhere on 4DX. Definitely recommend it, Maverick, on that. That was my first ever time going to one of those things, and it was an experience. It was beautiful. The only problem is our cinema here that has 4DX, when it comes to the sense of smell, they have run out of all the smells, all the kind of different flavors, and the only one they had was barbecue. And for some reason, they really amped up the smell of barbecue when it came to the beach scene, where all the big lads, half naked, fighting each other. The queer side of mine really loved it. The critic side of mine was like, I am very confused by this.
This is like they're going for like the Aussie vibes. They're like, oh yeah, you know, it's like having a barbecue on the beach and all this kind of stuff. They're like, it must be happening. It must be there. There must be a barbecue somewhere.
I mean, I was more going to say if there's anything I'm going to feel about watching a bunch of half naked men running around on the beach and then smelling potentially good flavored food and barbecue, I am going to feel confused. So I think that's a very good mood.
Yeah, and but anyway, but I'm really surprised by the film and a lot of shows. Actually, it was far more shows than actual films. But then I've been trying to catch up with everything that I've missed, and yeah, and right now I'm watching a lot of the shows right now, like the House of the Dragon, Rings of Power, and I'm really enjoying this current era of being a nerd. I never expected to have that. And of course, I'm watching Sandman on repeat because I never was expected to actually have that show in my lifetime. So yeah, I'm having a good time, to be honest, as a nerd.
So, as we alluded to right at the top, Craig, we talk about movies well worth watching despite bumps along the way. So, just to tease the audience at home, do you think today's movie is a bump or well worth watching?
So I went into this film with one goal in mind, one singular goal based on everything I've been told, which is, Craig, don't cry. I failed.
Well, we'll see if the tears were rolling for everyone else as well. But for anyone who didn't catch our previous episode, Craig, or maybe even the episode before that as well, can you just recap us on what we're watching and what led us to our film today?
So we wanted to make sure that we bridge the gap between the two halves of the year with our summer holiday. So going into last episode, we were asked for a film and its sequel. So the film that we were given for last episode was Paddington, which means obviously, and we can finally freely talk about it because we didn't want to make this episode irrelevant, not because of any weird controversies, because we've been referring to this film as the elephant in the room, and it's just not because of anything like that. We just wanted to make sure we actually had things to talk about for this episode, but we're having the cult hit that has now been created. The film, notorious for having a perfect score on Rotten Tomatoes I don't know if it's still the case, but it certainly was for a long time. Paddington 2.
Mr. Gruber? Oh, what's this? This is London. It's wonderful. Aunt Lucy always dreamed of coming to London. If she saw this, it would be like she were finally here. Aunt Lucy!
Oh, Paddington.
This is perfect. I've had a brilliant idea. I'm going to get a job and buy that book for Aunt Lucy's birthday. Hello, window cleaner. Ow. Are you quite sure you're ready for the workplace, Paddington?
It's Phoenix Buchanan, Dad's celebrity client.
I suppose you know who I am.
Oh, yes. You're a very famous actor.
VIP, celebrity.
Or used to be. Now you do dog food commercials.
Yes, so we look forward to discussing Paddington 2 today and undertaking our usual task of deciding whether it goes into the movie vault, our vault of movies that celebrates chosen films for all time. So, yeah, let's go straight into that discussion and chat all about this very famous film, which, like Craig said there, has become notorious for just how great the reviews have been and just people genuinely loving it, talking about it, mentioning the performances, even being brought up in a Nicolas Cage film earlier this year. So, yeah, Paddington 2 was released in 2017. The synopsis you get for this is Paddington, now happily settled with the Brown family and a popular member of the local community, picks up a series of odd jobs to buy the perfect present for his Aunt Lucy's 100th birthday, only for the gift to be stolen. So we're looking then at the cast. You got a lot of the returning players from last time. At the beginning, you got the voices of Michael Gambon and Imelda Staunton as Aunt Lucy. Then you got Ben Whishaw as Paddington. You've also got Sally Hawkins as Mary Brown, Hugh Bonneville as Henry Brown. We got Julie Walters as Mrs. Bird. Then there's a whole slew of like British actors that you get in terms of like his neighbours, etc. And of course, you got Hugh Grant as Phoenix Buchanan, the villain of this film, which a lot of people love and makes this film stand out to them as well. Actually, talking to an actress the other day who said that like that is like one of their goals is like to have that kind of role or that kind of performance in the future. So yeah, this film was once again directed by Paul King, which we discussed last time. And in terms of writing credits, it was written by Paul King along with Simon Farnaby, and then obviously credit to the original creator of Paddington Bear, which was Michael Bond, and then they got like additional credits to people who helped add to the film. So I'll go first of all to, you know, last time the elephant in the room was Paddington 2. Now we are Paddington 2 out of the way. We kind of have to bring up the fact that this this episode is coming just after a very big loss within the UK. Whether you're a royalist or not, you know, we're not here to discuss that really, but obviously we'll say that, you know, it's a big historic loss just for, you know, somebody who lived a very long and impressive life with Queen Elizabeth II. And yeah, weirdly timed that Paddington has become such a big part of media at the moment because she was in a sketch with Paddington, as I think we mentioned last time, and then because of that, Paddington has become this big part of you know, flower laying and like seeing toys outside Buckingham Palace. I don't know if anyone else saw that video of BBC News in which a man revealed that Paddington wasn't there. I don't know, did you guys know this? That apparently the Queen had to act opposite nothing, which I can't, that was mind-blowing to me. So thanks for that, BBC, for the important news there.
I'm more enjoying the weird associations that people have created of Paddington being the Grim Reaper.
Yeah, Definitely.
I don't understand why that's the goal you've gone for there.
Yeah, just a lot of people confused as to like, is he dead now? Is he like, he's holding her hand, taking her to like heaven? What's going on? So you guys, Steph, Jamie, if you had like any sort of weird occurrences with seeing this whole explosion with, not only, I guess, like people talking about the Queen again through like her film appearances, but also like seeing Paddington talked about. Again, Jamie, what was your reaction?
Well, I think, there's been the guy who's had it tattooed on his leg, that picture. I just, I think the biggest thought really for all of this is just the Facebook mums who have all been getting RSIs from just reposting everything about the Queen. So I think they're the real sufferers during this. But no, there is a sweetness to it that people, want to take marmalade sandwiches and lay it down. And, it's probably a little bit misplaced. There are plenty of food banks that need food rather than just being wasted for vermin on the ground. But again, like we can't go too much into it. But yeah, it's an odd time. But, it is nice that we have kind of a mascot for this country, and it seems to be an immigrant character, which is great.
And when we're talking, last time we were talking about like that British charm and everything like that, again, this seems to come out as well, like the Paddington element of, the charm of the story and stuff seems to like come back up again. And then there seems to be obviously, again, very serious subject, but, this whole discussion of like, what is British? Is this a good thing? Do we want to see like all this kind of like, oh, look at this, look at London, all this focus on that, which I guess then can sometimes change your view of like characters or films in terms of being like, oh, well, is that actually like aiding in that? But thankfully, like when I did my rewatch, I was just like, no, this is going for, a different kind of approach, even though it does celebrate places like London, it's not there kind of being stereotypical in, typical views of like, the royal family or, like fish and chips or anything like that. Stefanos, what about yourself? I know in the past, again, without going into serious topics, but, you discussed when, you came from Greece, etc. There was a big, element of like the view of, what Britain was like, etc. And that might have been painted through things like Paddington or Harry Potter, etc. Do you kind of have any different opinions to Paddington?
Like I said before I came here, I had a very sort of not glamorous, but definitely like sort of celebratory view of UK culture and all of that. And like, as you mentioned, stuff like Harry Potter, Bond, or stuff like that, were always a sort of like direct image to what, not necessarily British culture, but what British life, or at least working in the UK, could provide you. Because I was far more looking as a filmmaker, as a film critic, and as a film buff to what it is possible. But then obviously when I came here, things kind of changed because obviously it's the reality of things. Yeah, because living here, you have to work and you're doing all the things that all the working adults are doing here in the UK, or hopefully are able to do. Paddington, though, was always one of those things that I was never familiar before I came here. Even when I actually did come to the country, I wasn't like immediately thrown into that world because I wasn't familiar with the books. I knew the dolls. I knew all the toys, mainly because it was a very distinctive look. Because for me, it looked as a teddy bear with a hat and a jacket. And just that itself, I could tell that it was why it seemed so cute or something so prominent for children. But then the first film came out, and similarly to the sequel, also had like a lot of critical acclaim and all of that. So then I watched the film, and I started getting it. I was like, okay, I get why people love this character. Afterwards, I watched all the shorts and not read the books, but I had like a quick skim through it. And then 2017, at the time I was working in a cinema, and it was the first day that it came out. I had a very long shift, and I knew that I wanted to watch something easygoing, something breezy, and I did hear very good things about it, and I was expecting to have a good time. So I went to the latest showing, mainly because I finished around 9 p.m. Again, I don't know why they had a late show, Paddington 2, at 20 to 10. Like, I have no clue why. I went there. I was the only one in the whole theater. So I was kind of, because I love, because then I'm able to like shout and live commentary everything without disturbing anyone. And just like with Greg, I did not expect to end up crying like an actual little child to the extent.
All right, steady on with that depiction of how I was crying.
No, but it was very similar to what Pixar used to be. The very deep emotional investments, and that fake out in the end still has me. I literally thought, I'm not gonna spoil anything just in case someone hasn't seen it yet, but the point that there is a point which you think someone would, well, not
we'll
be
get to it
around
probably
anymore.
later. I suppose we could talk spoilers later, but
Yeah. But once that happens, I literally thought they were actually going to do it. Even knowing this was a family film, I believed it. And that alone, it deserves all the praise. As someone who is usually very, not cynical, but I am someone who sort of predicts everything they're going to see, especially family films, I did not expect myself to be that broken in that moment. And then things changed, they got better, but yeah, I still didn't expect it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think a lot of people just remember their experiences of watching this film, and that's what makes it, such a memorable one. And I guess it comes down to a lot with people's expectations. Jamie, so we discussed the first film last time. We also discussed Paul King. Did you have any particular thoughts going into this film? Do you remember the first experience of watching it, compared to the first film? Was there anything majorly different in how you sort of approached this one?
I did a run-up first. I thought I'll just get ready for it. No, I took my mum to see it, actually, when I think for like a morning showing, which is always just a really nice time to go. And it's just, I think it does what a sequel should do. It takes what works and just kind of goes up a notch. And, there are bits of me that kind of prefer the first one over the second one a little bit. Because, structure-wise, it's exactly the same. You've got all the same kind of beats, but it is just so good and just so kind of, just watching, especially Hugh Grant, who I'm sure we'll just talk about for an entire hour in this film. And I'm a huge Hugh Grant fan anyway. A huge Hugh, if that works. And, just to see him just have the time of his life. And when an actor's enjoying the role and not just doing it for a paycheck. I kind of went in with high hopes and came out with equally high hopes from it. Or, my hopes were exceeded.
Yeah, because it kind of brought about like a resurgence for Hugh Grant in a way. Steph, you might be able to help me with this. Am I right in thinking he's like in some big blockbuster or something soon? And I was just like, oh, good for him that he made it into this, etc. Like you see him a lot more in film and television now, and they seem to be approaching him kind of like almost like Christopher Walken or someone like that, in which they're like, oh, he's fun, he's cool, and like he sort of stands out within his role because he's always there as a kind of like elder character or like crazy Jeff Goldblum type, character.
No, like there was the interesting thing that 2010s for Hugh Grant is basically sort of is his own renaissance, but it's mainly because he started choosing roles that kind of broke the mold of basically his whole career. Because he has been saying multiple times that he sort of got tired of being compared to all the rom-com tropes and the rom-com roles. And I think what I would say in the specific film that's kind of started changing was with Cloud Atlas, because in that one, bizarre film like completely, but his plays a sort of like smaller, multiple roles, but all of them are the villain, which that kind of started the whole sort of renaissance of his. And especially the fact that one of those roles was literally a futuristic cannibal that kills people and eats their flesh. So I'd say that is a big jump from Love Actually. And then since then, he has been trying to go something a bit more daring, something a bit more, even with some levels personal for him, or challenging even. And Paddington 2 was literally on that middle of that renaissance. And now from now on, he just skyrocketed, and he started doing some very daring stuff, like his limited series on HBO with Nicole Kidman. For some reason, the title is escaping to me. But he's
The Undoing, was it The Undoing?
The Undoing, yes, which he is absolutely phenomenal. I'm not a big fan of the limited series in general, but I was a huge fan of his performance. And yeah, now he's doing what was it? Dungeons and Dragons adaptation, which again, which I don't expect much from the film, but I am very looking forward to see him because so far he seems to have had a great time doing this film.
But it was almost, again, with like what you were saying, it was the Very English Scandal as well, where he was Jeremy Thorpe with Ben Whishaw, funnily enough.
Yeah,
saying,
very different Paddington.
Yeah, so he said, there was one day he was trying to kill Paddington, and the next day he was trying to F Paddington. So he got such a good wit to it. But like you say, it's a real like reconnaissance for the Hugh Grant. I don't know if there's a term for it yet.
Yeah, I think that definitely is the case. Yeah, I think Dungeons and Dragons is potentially what I was thinking of. When I saw him there, I kind of reminded me of that sort of like Jeff Goldblum-esque nature of just like, he's a sort of like crazy character. And yeah, I think for the past few years, he has had those kind of like strong roles. He was in things like Foster, Florence Jenkins, and he was in Pirates. He did the voice in that. So he was kind of embracing more like he's always been about in some ways. But, they weren't, like you said, Steph, they weren't just typical rom-coms and, like the sort of like the same, playing the same role every time.
Yeah, because for ages he just had the association of just being the British bumbling romantic. And I definitely think with this film, you prove to all audiences he's not just that. He can do a range of other things. I mean, I think it's best placed by literally have him doing having a character that has 22 characters themselves, and then just every now and then just does different character voices.
Yeah, I think that it just shows off the range and just like how versatile he can be. I guess a lot of people have said that. They were like, oh, this is the first time I realized, that he was like a competent actor, etc. Or they realized how funny he could be as well.
It's literally what a previous guest of ours, Liv Mackinder, said to me when I said about this episode. She went, the one where he himself discovered he can act.
That's definitely one of, the big parts of this film. I think obviously, the charm as well. Like you said, Jamie, just the fact that it does what a sequel should do in terms of like taking the strengths of the previous film and I guess giving people what they kind of expect in a good way. I think there's very much a comfort in that way of something like a Toy Story or Pixar, like we mentioned before, that it gives you the typical tropes. I think like you, Jamie, I think I'm unsure as to whether I do prefer it from the first one, because I think that, as we were mentioning at the beginning, sometimes I just have to credit something when it's just then a bit more ambitious, or it's introducing something, because to me that's what sort of like started it off with. If it kind of like does it again, I'm like, well, you're just doing the same thing. I didn't feel that here there was quite the sort of same creative risks, but there was still the strong sequences and moments and visual moments, but they were kind of just like the same as in the second film. Not to like say that they're any worse or anything like that. I just didn't feel that this had I don't think it had the edge to it that the first film had, in terms of like I was saying with the first one, it had like a sort of sketch comedy-esque nature to it, and the comedy was a bit more random. I think here is a lot more like of the antics and the fun lines and the characters. Anything else that stands out to anybody in terms of the story of this one? Again, I kind of think it plays it safe, but in a good way. I think that the strength of this is that it very much presents itself as kind of the first film has to introduce you to the character of Paddington, which I think is what works there. And like, you're discovering who the characters are. They're going through a bit more of a character arc. Here, I think the family take a bit more of a back seat. But what it does accomplish is there has the great element of a storybook, is that the fact that it can just be like, it's a film about Paddington getting a present for his auntie. And at first you kind of look at it and go, oh, is it just that? You expect it to become more. And it doesn't really, and that's what's really lovely about the film, is the way it bookends itself and really does make it a sort of very traditional Paddington story. I think halfway through it, you might think like, oh, would this have become a book? You know, Paddington behind bars kind of thing. But it's the fact that they didn't go into those easy tropes. They didn't call it as something like the Muppets did. It wasn't Paddington Most Wanted or anything like that. So I think that their restraint there, you know, is really commendable. And yeah, it's just, I just love the fact that it sort of bookended itself, and it's just this really nice, simple story, which just has a lot of like fun and, you know, antics in between. You know, Jamie, what do you think of it now? Where you said also you don't know whether you prefer the first one, but, you know, do you think the strengths of this one lie in its story, or more like you were saying before, maybe just the themes and the strengths of the technical aspects, etc.?
I think the strengths really come through the characters, like bringing in Brendan Gleeson as Knuckles. Like, again, you know, it's Brendan Gleeson coming from like his kind of In Bruges kind of vibe as well. You know, just getting comedy, that kind of deadpan, and there, you know, with it. And again, there's so many like pastiches in this film as well. Like when he eats the marmalade sandwich, you can just see like where he's finding his inspirations, and there's maybe a little bit more kind of style to the second film that the first one doesn't. Like you were saying, David, about it being kind of a lot more random in its comedy. This time it's very kind of constructive. The barbershop scene where he's cutting the hair, and, you know, he's a Tory's dream. You know, Liz Truss wants everyone doing a side hustle. So just watching him at the beginning doing that. So yeah, no, I think it's the characters that make it stand out. And I think that's why if Hugh Grant wasn't in this, I don't think people would talk about it as much. If it was just another Nicole Kidman-esque character, which it could have been, but luckily it wasn't. So rejoice that they went for that casting. Yeah, I think it is the characters that just kind of, and again, like you said, they did establish so much already, so we could just hit the ground running, which works so well.
I think they also do a lot with the community that I think really wins me around in this film, because it's not just the fact that they have a lot of British stars that a lot of people recognize and get invested in. So, for example, I'm a big Ben Miller fan. I'm a big Jessica Hines fan. We forgive Pudsey the dog, the movie. But just seeing them at the beginning, and also just seeing that throughout the film, they've technically, you know, become a couple because of the antics of Paddington. That's what I enjoyed about the first film, and I've talked about how he's the sort of character that just doesn't change himself but changes everyone around him. I just like the way that they actually show how he's had an effect on the community. Just A, in like the small antics he does, B, even just in the interactions he has at the beginning of the film, is just clearly these are things that he's been doing for a long time, stopping that one guy from getting locked out of his house, helping the bin guy revise for his exams, and then just seeing how that all sort of like falls apart as he's gone. And for me, that's where like the emotional heart of the film really hits, is that at the end, sorry to go straight to that, I predicted they were going to bring Aunt Lucy over to London, so I'm glad they followed through with that. But it was how they did it insofar as the entire community banded together and just there. That's what kind of got me welling up and crying a bit, just seeing all those faces. I'm a sucker for somebody thinking they were alone in something, and then just seeing a group of people, no, we've got your back. And I thought it was a very natural, very well done thing that they did. So the fact that I also remember a lot of those side characters, and we get favorites from the first film. We get Peter Capaldi's character back, Mr. Curry. That's it. I knew it was a food. I couldn't remember which one. And you also had Jim Broadbent back again in a really natural role. Also, that book scene where Paddington discovers the book and just imagines his life. I thought that. You want to talk about technical creativity? I thought that was a really good thing for them to have done, and just the way in which all of the paper pop-up looks and then interactive variety. I thought that was a stunning scene. That really drew me in. That was when I just thought, on a technical level, I thought I was going to appreciate this film a lot more. Because in the first film, I appreciated little flashes that they did, such as like the band throughout London, which come back in hilarious fashion. The fact that you hear their music playing in prison, you go, wait, are they in prison? Yeah. And then they were in prison. But they just did that. And then I think they actually did push the boat out a little bit more. So I think that they mastered, I probably agree insofar as the comedy. I don't think it's as random. I'm perfectly fine with that, because I think on the character and emotional level, I think that's where I think they go up a step for me personally, especially considering as well that the villain isn't some weird random BS who's just drawn in from the past of Paddington. It's somebody with like natural motivations, which that like happen throughout the story, and they just so coincide with what Paddington's after. But yeah, I think Jamie was right earlier. If we wanted to talk about Hugh Grant for an hour, we easily could.
Yeah, no, and I think, you know, that's where I would be on the same page of being like, well, you know, I could go between each one, whereas like there's the elements I like about Paddington 1, but as you said there, I think then there is the elements like the characters, the community, how that kind of all wraps up. I love, you know, that scene which you get later on, and especially because so many films, especially sequels, have to have that very forced thing which kind of bugs me, which was kind of in the Star Trek films recently, and they even do it up to the newest ones of being like, well, what's bugging the lead character this time? Oh, you know, like Kirk isn't getting old, he needs some glasses, and, you know, oh, and let's give him a son. And, you know, like, it's very much like when they feel like, oh, well, what can the character arc for this be? And you just feel it's very like shoehorned in, it's very heavy handed. And I kind of like here that, you know, Paddington almost doesn't need that. It's again like about how everyone reacts to Paddington, so it kind of is refreshing in that sense that it's not a typical character arc. You know, I think he still goes on a journey, obviously, of kind of like seeing the grim reality of like when he thinks people have abandoned him, and, you know, like having the pressures of, you know, wanting to please his aunt, etc. But, you know, it's a lovely message to have that, like, no, these people have got that, you know, your back, and, you know, they will remember you, which I think was nice, because I think with the prisoners scene, again, not to go to too much spoilers, but later on I was like, oh, please don't just turn into like, you know, straight up villains to be like, oh no, you know, we were always going to betray you all along. I think it's nice that, again, to really emphasize that message that he needed to change them in some ways, and so like make them come around to the way that he acts as well. So
it was a good balance, to be honest. The fact that he didn't instantly turn them all the way.
No, and yeah, that stood out to me as well. I think the last film you had moments like the tree and the house and stuff, but this one, that pop-up scene, that was probably the best one, I thought. And it that echoes back to the books and stuff. It really is in that style. I think it looks beautiful. Stefanos, any kind of like standout moments for you? Any other performances apart from Hugh Grant?
So I think I won't like repeat myself out of all of you guys, because more or less I kind of agree with everything. I think the main reason why the film is a standout, or why it's so celebrated, at least from my perspective, and especially for me, is two categories. One is in film and the other one is outside of the film. In film, like you all guys said, they're really committed to everything. And I do say the fact that it is a simple premise, but they've really emphasized on that and around it, and they're committed to everything. And that is something I really appreciate when a film, a sequel, especially when a sequel does it, where they commit to a certain idea and a certain technique, the production value itself. And it's not even that expensive, but they make it look extremely expensive because of the creative level. They're going for everything. Like I said, for the pop-up book, everything in the prison looks like a Wes Anderson film. Like all of that stuff, it's just escalating, but in a more creative manner. And like Jamie said, and now using that creativity to expand on each character. All that is great. Now, I think another factor of why it's such an emotionally engaging film in things because of what was happening at that time in real world, because it was 2017. It was the year after Brexit. Things were being extremely divided. And then we got this film about this little immigrant bear coming to a community filled with people of so many different cultures and communities, and not showing the bad side, actually showing whenever they are mean or anything like that, it's always about circumstances, and it's not because they are inherently evil. Even Phoenix Buchanan, even he finds himself in the end when he gets his punishment and finds a sort of new light. And all that stuff, and especially like Greg said about the ending, for the whole community coming together to help this one individual in need. It's just, it brought a lot of stuff that I needed, and I do believe a lot of people needed at the time, and we still need right now. And it is it's something so admirable that a film could do that, because let's be honest, film is not always that important, and I'm saying that, and I live and die for films. But now that there is this one singular work that means a lot more to what it was intended, or even where they were aiming for it, and I think that is a factor in it. And
well, one I would say, Steph, it stands out in terms of like the relevancy to when it was made, or even when you watch it now, is especially to now. And I think that when I was rewatching it, I was kind of like, oh, I'm not sure if I would sort of buy into this whole like they think Paddington did it kind of thing. Like they just see him like run out to the shop, etc., and like instantly you go to prison. And I was like, oh, hang on, let's think about what's happened recently in London. Is it that surprising that a British police officer just saw somebody, maybe like made a judgment based on their looks, and wrongly accused that person of doing something, and it went way too far in terms of passing judgment or the law, and even in the case of the punishment, even like personal prejudice came into like how that person was punished. I was watching it being like, this is 100% accurate of the policing system that we currently have and being commentated on in the world.
The fact that even the person whose shop was being burgled was just like, I don't think it was Paddington. Presumably, if he's being charged, he could just be like, you're going to
press charges.
I don't want to press charges.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, like there's stuff like that, which, and I do like the fact that in the end it does kind of gives a hopeful note, the fact that things will be better. But yeah, like I think that is a factor. And also, I do want to give all the credit to me. Yes, I could speak about Hugh Grant for hours, maybe days, maybe the whole year, but in this film. But I do also want to give like huge props to Ben Whishaw, because the fact that he's a digital character, but he's been mainly doing voice work in this, and the fact that I believe there was a bear and sounds like that, and I was invested with him, it gives a huge props. Also, fun fact, actually I've met Ben Whishaw a couple of times in London. Very lovely fella, really nice person. And for this very few interactions I had with him, I could see why they casted him for Paddington, because there is a sort of sincerity in him, and I can definitely see that within multiple of his performances.
So what life aspect did he help you out with?
Oh, to be fair, we were smoking and he gave me a light.
If Paddington actually did that, I'd be impressed. That would be
just somebody
crazy.
Tried to light it. It's like, here you go. Mr. Brown doesn't think I have this.
That is right to sort of bring him up as well, though, because when you're talking about Hugh Grant and Sally Hawkins, etc., I think, you don't want to miss out on the main, cast member himself. Because obviously, I think last time, obviously, there was the discussion of who would have potentially originally played him, etc. And I think here that, he's able to really embrace and become the character even more as well. And I think even, again, by talking about recent events, I think the fact that the sketch with the Queen, and like when I think Paddington has his own Twitter, which a lot of people follow, and I think it goes to show how special the character is in that people will get comfort from that. And I think just the simplicity of his tweet, just saying like, it was a privilege, Mom, or like, something like that when, her passing was announced. I think that people kind of really take comfort in that they can look at that and go like, oh, it'll be okay. Like Paddington said it'll be all right. And, he's showing his respect. And I think a lot of that comes from, Ben Whishaw's performance, because it's ultimately his Paddington, his voice that's there with the Queen in that sketch. And it's his kind of appearance of the character, his voice, which you kind of imagine on Twitter, etc. Is it the same for you, Jamie? I know previously we talked about like the person who photoshops Paddington into different movies, etc. But do you always imagine the Ben Whishaw voice when you see him online, etc., with those tweets?
I think it's just synonymous now. It is like Steph was saying, it's perfect casting. to think that it would have been Colin Firth originally, like a much older kind of voice, but there's just such an innocence and naivety to his to how he plays it. It's just perfect, and you just couldn't imagine another voice doing it.
Yeah, I mean that's the strength of voice acting, isn't it? Because could be the difference between playing a quite annoying character and then someone endearing. And I mean, I've seen a good example would be Finding Nemo, because I have seen no one, not two, not three, but 4 different language versions of it. And the character of Dory in each version, it's very different to how I feel towards her. Like Ellen DeGeneres is brilliant in English. In Greek, it's okay. I can't say it's not good. Korean gets kind of frustrating. The French is impossible. And I don't think it's because it sounds like my French auntie, which I don't particularly like. Hi, auntie. But I do believe voice acting, again, it should be given more credits to every voice actor, because they could literally create a character just like Ben Whishaw did, or it could literally ruin them forever. Like I can't think of anyone right now, but definitely if we just bring that up another day, we could find multiple different voice actors, which, for better or for worse, then were not good for it.
I just can't imagine a world where, if we did have Colin Firth as Paddington, getting to this film with the villain is Hugh Grant, we have another situation of Colin Firth versus Hugh Grant, just somewhere in the world, like Renee Zellweger is like, why was I not in this film? Hello?
I think what I was thinking during this as well was how, I'm not sure if things would change then with like a third Paddington film. I think that you've seen a lot of innovations in the way that we've used like practical characters and how you sort of blend in CG characters. I think of something like His Dark Materials on the BBC. I know that they use like puppetry there and then kind of like CG over it. And I was thinking that parts of this film, obviously, which is then 2017, so it's a bit older, but there was parts of me which were looking at it thinking like, is this your great acting? Did you, were you only working with a tennis ball? And I think obviously things like Star Wars has really taught us with Grogu, something like that can come across and become really endearing with a puppet, etc. But I don't know if Paddington would work obviously as a puppet, but I'm wondering in the future, will there be kind of more of a realism to him if they will sort of progress it from like CG to something else because of the success of things like Grogu. Again, that's what, I mentioned Muppets Most Wanted earlier, but there is something about that. I don't know whether they're both because they're about sequels, about, nostalgic characters that end up getting imprisoned, etc., and wrongly imprisoned. But it did remind me of that film. But again, the Muppets are similar in which like you see physical puppets there and it kind of brings through those memories and
but that's how it's always been, right? I think if you were to literally make a film with CGI Muppets, I think everyone would be an outcry because they'll fundamentally move in different ways than you're accustomed to, in the same way that no matter how good your animatronics is, I would be hard pressed for you to ever create animatronics that is able to move like Paddington currently does, because it's all about like the mouth, especially. I think that would just cross a line for a lot of people of just being uncomfortable. We would literally be walking down the uncanny valley. Yeah,
there's definitely elements here which you couldn't do, and the CG comes through in terms of like when he's like vibrating with the clippers. I think that's what's like some of the fun stuff with the antics. I think just even the naivety and just the charm of the whole washing the prisoners' outfits into pink. I think that that's just such a endearing moment. There's times in which he does things in which you're like, oh, would you do that? Is that a bit over the top? The barber scene kind of reminded me very much of Mr. Bean in a way as well, and I think that comes into the kind of like English British charm of it.
Funny you say that. I literally watched that exact episode of Mr. Bean about a week ago.
Because of the film? Or just
no, as in coincidentally I watched it.
Okay,
because I didn't know anything about Paddington 2 until like this morning. I watched the film for the first time ever this morning.
That is a weird coincidence to have seen that episode. But I think that, there's just such a like charm to him when you just cut to them all dressed in pink and they're annoyed. And I'm really glad again that the script always kind of restrains itself and doesn't go into typical tropes, that I think that they could have easily been like a very like kind of stereotypical or kind of homophobic slur in the past of being like, yeah, now we all, like he says like flamingos, which is good. But I think in the past, if this was like made in the 90s, there could have easily been like a slur or something thrown there. But even the fact that they then embrace that, you were saying, Steph, about like the practical elements of this film, the design, I think that it is like a gorgeous film in many elements. I was thinking with Buchanan's kind of house, I was looking at that thinking, oh, some like set decorator had real fun like making this place. Not even just his attic, I think like his living room and stuff is fascinating. The colors that they use, the greens, etc. All the characters' houses, all the neighbors.
I cried with laughter because they used one of Hugh Grant's actual headshots in the collection of photos he had. I saw it and I was like, oh my God. What a self-burn on that actor.
But the prison scene, I guess you also have like the kind of transforming of the prison when you see all like the flowers and stuff like start to appear and how people change. All of that is fantastic. I think it's really great. And like they use again the technical aspect and Paul King's kind of strengths come through there, I think, in terms of showing how it works. The only thing I'm gutted about, and this might be out there somewhere, but I think this was a mistake. I wish they didn't put the Hugh Grant scene, again, it's spoilers kind of here, but we've passed that point, I think now. The end credit thing, I was like, I wish this was on the screen. I wish it wasn't minimized. I was like, I want to see this in its full glory. I think other films would have just gone to it or just had like a bit of the credits and then flipped to it. I was like, I don't want to watch this on a tiny little screen in the credits. It was like, there was so much lights and dazzle and like, such impressive set work done there. I was like, oh, come on, put this on the full screen.
That's why you watch film in the cinema, because I didn't have that problem at all.
True.
I'm also conflicted because I also think for me, part of the joke that works so well with that is because it's in the small scene, you think, okay, it's going to be him suffering in prison. So the fact that he then gets an entire musical number that you're just not expecting because of that aspect ratio, I was like, okay, yeah, this actually really works. And I will say, the costume designer that made his prison overalls with the little collar as well to look razzle dazzle, I want their number.
I really liked as well his, the fact they used his costumes to flip between different characters. And I like that this, they were using traditional characters, Poirot, etc., Hamlet. I like that one of them seemed to be Mr. Toad, potentially, from Wind in the Willows. I looked at that, I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's Mr. Toad. I'm like, is he going to like start talking like him at some point? But
it's possible.
Jamie, is there any other sort of standouts for you in terms of sequences or other performances? Anything else we haven't mentioned that you so really love?
The entourage in the prison, like all these kind of, I think, who's the really tall guy who's tall, massive? He plays, is it Gary King? He plays his sitcom. He does that Murder and Successville.
The one who, like, when they're leaving and he's watching through the bars, like who's like about cooking and stuff in the film.
That whole onto that rogues gallery of just British comedy actors. It just kind of plays, and I think that's the beauty of it. Like in the first film, you have Matt King in there, and I really hope in the third film they'll have a little bit of Colin Firth. I feel they have to. I feel he has to have a part in it. But I mean, the train sequence as well works really well, and that kind of joke about the lads playing with his train sets and everything and feeling too cool, and yeah, and then it suddenly becomes relevant, and again, like, it's all those little character moments just coming to fruition and making sense. It reminds me, I'm a big Jacques Tati fan, and it's like, those kind of just pulling all the strings together and orchestrating it just works like to a T.
Yeah, that entire cast of prisoners is fantastic, and as I mentioned at the beginning, it very much is just, it's similar to what we were talking about with Italian Job earlier in the years. They all have their roles and their nicknames. So the fact that was one of my favorite jokes, definitely in the film, is just the introduction of those characters and just the way that they do it. Just, which one was it where he was just like Squeaky Pete, and he's just like, and like they're just doing like the sound effects, etc. And then of course like Charlie Rumble, who's like, and all that was great.
What was the one politician?
Sir Geoffrey Wilcox.
Yeah,
yeah.
One, I loved him. Two, my other favorite thing about that is when Mr. Brown just goes, "Be right back," and turns off the light and starts writing. It's like, we can still hear you. Yeah. You only just turned off the light. You didn't turn off the microphone. The microphone's on the left. It says microphone. Just every bit of that just started making me laugh more and more.
Yeah, that was a great sequence.
I mean, we should know that the fact that Paul King did work on The Mighty Bush, which it is very infamous of being very creative when it comes to its production design and especially being a bit more playful with his directing, especially with the very minimum budget he had. And yes, a lot of the jokes are very much that kind of comedy, the very sort of smart ass but kind of like obvious quotes and such, which really that helped. And I love when they actually have actual comedy writers doing comedy. It's very good. It's very promising. Praise Hollywood, especially Marvel, do that. And big credits also I want to give to the composer, Dario Marianelli, which he's a great composer in general. He usually works in very serious dramas like Pride and Prejudice, Atonement, Darkest Hour. I don't know why I'm only describing the films or that Joe Wright made, but yes, those are the kind of films he usually goes for. And there is this sort of both playfulness, but also sort of when it becomes sad, you can feel that it's emotionally dreading. It really gets you, and that is something that really helped in the end. But again, it really felt for me this was a work of love from every department. Like it seems like everyone was enjoying this and they wanted to work on this, and they put a lot of efforts and actual care to it. And I think that is the biggest thing I take out of it whenever I watch it.
Yeah, I was going to mention the soundtrack as well because I think it's interesting when you look at the ones he's worked on. He did Kubo and the Two Strings, so I guess he's had a bit more family animation kind of experience there. But yeah, like you said, he's also done things like Darkest Hour. Craig, he actually worked on V for Vendetta's soundtrack. So one that really stands out there is the Eevee Reborn sort of music, which kind of follows the same traditions that he uses. It kind of reminds me of a composer like Alexandre Desplat when you get something that's kind of very sort of moody and grounded and feels kind of sophisticated, but in this kind of fantastical sort of brighter setting. I think it kind of really makes you take it more serious, which I think, and it's sort of adds this kind of sophistication to it, which I think is really nice. So adds this extra depth. And even to go back where we were talking about the performances and the characters, I think it's like you said, Steph, it goes back to the kind of Mighty Boosh aspect, that it isn't just oh, this guy is the big guy, this guy is the skinny guy, they don't go with just typical tropes. I think that, you look at a character like Spoon, is it? And that, he's got that sort of quirky voice and the glasses. He's very much it's as if they just told them right, do what you want and come up with this character and really focus on it. Don't just play it as a kind of stereotype. And I really liked Phibbs as well. I think Noah Taylor, he's a favorite of mine. I think he always really sort of stands out in the roles he does. He was in Game of Thrones when he played that kind of hunter of some kind, which was involved in the the Night's Watch story, etc. He always stands out to me, and I think he did a good job here as well. And that was the kind of trio with Knuckles, McGinty, and you very much get what he's all about very much from the get-go. And as you mentioned earlier, Jamie, with the sandwich in the mouth, I think that was very much the style was coming through there, just to cut to him with it there, and the way he says marmalade, it was just how do you make this, etc. It was just great. And I think that entire cast of characters really did shine through.
I mean, when we mentioned earlier about Elizabeth II's death, and yeah, I do agree with the sentiments. If you're gonna make sandwiches, don't just leave them on the ground. But anyways, but I do love the fact that this was, I would imagine, mostly from children, and that it was a sentiment of care that they learned from Paddington. So that is something. I think that's the most notable legacy out of this film. I mean, obviously, we can talk ages about, that he kind of brought Hugh Grant into the spotlight for a lot of people. The fact that this kind of gave a new high to how we should make fantastical family films. Well, there's a lot of ways we can say all the stuff, but in the end, it is the fact that this is a learning point for the younger generation, for how they should treat people, to what morals they should learn, and how they should act with other people, with family, friends, and especially strangers. And I think that is the biggest lesson out of all. And believe me, I'm usually very cynical when it comes to real life stuff, but that's the beauty of Paddington. It's the fact that even the most cynical person will think a bit more positive about the world. So that's a credit. Don't worry, that will change soon. I'm going to watch something that's going to be extremely depressing, and I'm going to change the whole aspect again.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a good point to make as well about how that's the kind of sort of pedestal to, for other films to kind of aim for in terms of your family friendly films. And I think that you've seen then similar attempts, we mentioned last time, Peter Rabbit, which is just the complete opposite of you've gone in this very obnoxious kind of popular American almost approach. Which at the time I was just oh, of course they've done this to everything, the Smurfs. But now, especially now, how much we've bigged up Paddington, I'm it really is such a shame that Peter Rabbit, again, which is this kind of quintessential literary kind of classic, has been sort of tarnished in that way, and Paddington has, done so well. But even when you look at this year, they tried to sort of make the Secret Garden a thing again, the Railway Children return and all this kind of thing, and none of it really kind of flew off in the way the Paddington does. And I think it shows the importance of that creativity and having the right director and the right sort of tone and approach. I think that is really important in terms of making something stand out and have its own style without just being kind of oh, well, let's just make it look pretty, or let's just kind of bring back something that people remember or was a classic book. But if it hasn't got anything so new or fresh to bring, well, what's the point? I guess that's the advantage with Paddington, is that he wasn't really on the big screen as much as other properties have been in the past. As you guys have said, that it celebrates diversity very well. It's very charming, but not overly so. And I think that to go back to the emotional side, as we said earlier, somebody like Imelda Staunton, I think, helps that. They bookend it very well by having the kind of importance, as you said, Jamie, by family members reminding you of grandparents, etc. And I think that's what got me at the end. Is I was almost thrown by that bit in which the family don't turn up and Paddington feels alone, and he's oh, well, maybe they will forget about me. And you have the music come in, and then the rainforests or grows around him, etc. And I was just oh, okay, this is the bit that people, cry at, and this is when it's supposed to get me. But because then that passed, and then we had the whole thing in the, with the train and stuff, I was no, you're not getting me, I'm not being thrown by that one. But like Craig, then that end scene, especially because I just had this lump in my throat, oh, she's going to be there, isn't it? Aunt Lucy's going to be there. And, it was, again, I found that obviously the whole community coming together was really sweet, and how they had banded together. But just the whole opening of the door and him hugging her, and just the simplicity of ending the film on "Happy Birthday, Aunt Lucy." I just loved that. Again, it's just simple storytelling at its best, and not ending it on a joke or anything stupid. But it's like a little short cartoon. It's just it ends I'm trying to find this for my Aunt Lucy. And, ends with just "Happy Birthday, Aunt Lucy." You could just imagine it in the book like that, just the one line, which I thought was beautiful.
Okay, so take your cassettes, rewind them, and play them again, because it's VHS Corner. This week, following up from last episode's set of facts, we've asked Jamie if he'd be willing to talk us through some behind the scenes of this film. So take it away, Jamie.
Okay, so it's just a few that I've got. So we talked about Michael Bond, the author of the Paddington books. So he died on the last day of filming Paddington 2. So, never got to see it. And then 6 months before the release of the film, at the age of 91, his last book about the title character was released in 2017. So still, getting stuff out there, which was good going. And the Paddington books, does anyone have a guess at how many books they've sold? Worldwide throughout his career?
60 million.
2 billion.
5.
Okay, you're all wrong. 35 million copies.
Okay, too high.
Like that's half at the population of the UK. Anyone want to guess how fast a adult grizzly bear can run in miles per hour?
I'm going to say 36 miles an hour.
Quite specific.
Is this the speed that you run up to the film in? You said earlier you had a run up to Paddington 2. So okay.
You asked me what my approach was to it. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I think that you could go about 28 miles per hour then.
Okay. I've got long legs. Very long.
Definitely faster than me, kilometers per hour.
How many? How much?
Just faster than me.
Okay. So 40 miles per hour, which is the same speed as a greyhound.
Definitely faster than me.
So I wasn't too far off.
Then the last one, back to being a bit more film related. So in Hugh Grant films, when they're dubbed overseas, and obviously it'll be different actors playing the role. Steph, you'll know, having seen quite a few of the different dubbings. So in France, has anyone got any idea what the French actor, very famous French actor who dubs Hugh Grant is in all of the Hugh Grant films? Anyone got any clues?
No idea.
No. Vincent Cassel?
Ooh, really?
Yeah. So anytime Hugh is dubbed in French, it kind of turned more from facts into a Q&A. I'm sorry.
That's fine, yeah.
Gone in a different direction with it. But and also the final fact is that Hugh Grant's dad, when they watched the film in the cinema, he asked, how did they get the bear to do that? Which is a real bear.
Well,
So
he
there's-
would be shocked after the BBC news that he was not really there.
Yeah, I remember seeing the sort of tribute to Michael Bond at the end, and I thought, oh, that's sad. And again, it's a weird coincidence with, I think I was reading an article, I think I did actually screenshot it, which was kind of like relevant, I suppose, to what we're talking about in terms of the Queen, etc., is that I think his daughter said, Paddington brings people together and brings out the best in people. That's a quote from one of the books. I certainly think he did that with the Queen. I think she was talking there about the sketch, but obviously this film very much embraces that. And then, so she's still talking about the sketch, and Paddington with the Queen said he gave her the opportunity to show that side of her that was so special, brought people closer to her. That's why so many people are leaving these tributes as wonderful, uplifting memory of her. But she said when talking about her dad, she was saying he would have been overwhelmed by the sort of popularity. I certainly am. He wasn't a royalist, but he had this close association with the Queen. He was an admirer of the Queen. And I think he was actually at the coronation because he was working at the BBC at the time, and he was like sort of taking photos of filming, etc. And I think that that's quite interesting, that's very much the mood of a lot of people and grandparents at the moment, people who aren't like, oh, well, I'm not, I don't care about the monarchy, I'm not a royalist, but people just have an admiration for the lady herself, etc. And I think that you mentioned his last book, Jamie.
2017. So
and wasn't it like about St. Paul's or like one of the big landmarks, one of the churches or something like that? And I think that he had gone there for an occasion with the Queen, so it was like something she was like opening or like making a speech or something, and he had been invited there for that, and that's when he thought, oh, my next book will be about this. So it's again that kind of weird timing of like his associations with the Queen, his interactions with her, Paddington being brought into all of that. Yeah, I think that it's mad that he passed away like as they finished filming as well. So to lastly round up our discussion of legacy of Paddington 2, we now go to the movie vault and ask, does Paddington 2 deserve to be remembered for all time and gain the honour of a place in our movie vault? Stefano says you didn't join us with Paddington 1, which did make it into the movie vault. I'll ask you, do you think that was the right choice? And do you think the Paddington 2 deserves to go in?
Yes and yes. I mean, I think we've all kind of said our valid points, which basically were all the same about this film. And if anything else, the fact is generally speaking a very new film. It was like back in 20. Oh my God, it's been 5 years. I just realized it's been half a decade already.
Yeah, an interesting take to go for new film, but yeah, fair enough.
Technically, yes, it's not even 10 years old yet. But the fact that even back then, when the film came out, there was already a quite big following and a big conversation about it. And that has just expanded ever since. And even the fact that the Americans care about it, which I never thought and the American audience would actually love, this sort of smaller, family-friendly film like Paddington. So yeah, just for that, huge praise. And yeah, absolutely. Mainly because if I say no, I'm very certain I'm going to regret it. So yeah.
Yeah, and as you said earlier, again, like the cynic in you was, turned around on it. Jamie, what's your thoughts?
100% put it in there. I think that's the vibe of this chat. Yeah, I think it's perfect for it. Also, just waiting for the Criterion version. You got WALL-E from Pixar.
Yeah, maybe they'll have like the bear, like, a toy bear, like they've kind of constructed WALL-E and Eva like out of trash or something in that cover. Maybe that's what the Paddington 2 one will be like. We talked earlier as well about the Rotten Tomatoes score, and I think I do remember this controversy at the time. So Craig, it has gone down from 100%. It's 99% because I think they found some other ones, and they're going to make Craig mad, I think. And this is to go against what Steph was saying, and this is why you shouldn't be, this person shouldn't be a qualified reviewer in terms of reading one of the rotten scores, which has brought it down to 99%. This man has put, as a man who is dead inside, I couldn't fully buy into the world of Paddington, but I watched with my son and he did enjoy it, which is something, just not for me. That's not how reviewing works.
That's not objectivism.
So, yeah. Definitely a good example. I remember people did years ago, I think the same thing happened to Toy Story 3, in which people were like, you're clearly just ragging on this film to kind of get more clicks, which is quite, a popular thing to do. Apparently this other person, I think it's a similar thing. They said that they originally said that they didn't think it was all that charming, but which he originally said when it came out in 2017. But yeah, not 100% anymore because of people like that. Craig, your response and your thoughts on the movie world.
Yeah, they can burn in hell. I think it's only fair that I use the same criteria that I use to put Paddington into the movie vault here, which is, would I want my kids to see this? Yes, and I think there's more grounds on which I want them to see, because I think the other thing to consider now, which makes this an even easier sell than the original Paddington, was there's obviously such a big thing about what do you want a sequel to be, what should a sequel do, and I think we all agree that in terms of actually taking the good elements of Paddington and building upon them in a really compelling way, this film is a great example of doing that. So given how many kids' films get sequels and just turn out utter shit, I want them to take notice of this film, of you can have a good balance of meant for kids and also still meaningful, engaging, clever, and just fun. So yeah, it absolutely has to go in.
Yeah, and I think while you could look at the movie vault and there's a lot of things like, Star Wars, Muppets, Disney, etc., I think again that, there is then obviously a lot of, horror or random, British films, etc. And I think that this does, represent well those kind of, as you said, well-made children's family films, which everyone can love. The themes are great. Really blends together what we were saying about, respecting and appreciating the technical aspects, but also the story. And, simply for me as well, is just that storybook element, is just that book ending of the story, which I think is beautiful. And everything we've said before, like the score and the production design, etc. So, yeah, no surprise, but into the movie vault goes Paddington 2 from 2017. Do you agree? Are you that man from Rotten Tomatoes who gives the negative review? And let us know what you would like us to discuss to go into the movie vault in the future. But for now, we round things up with our ever fun film-related challenge. Over to Craig.
We're in the end game now.
Okay, endgame time. This game is simply called Exit Pursued by a Bear. So obviously, last time we looked at the legacy of sequels. This time, I think we actually just dive into the true legacy of what Paddington is, which is just a famous bear. So that's what I wanted to do in this game. I've taken various bears from various films and also people who turn into bears in various films. And I'm just going to give you their names, and I want you, quickfire, to tell me the name of that film. So the way we'll do this is your buzzer is going to be your very own bear growl.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Why?
Okay, so Steph, let's hear your bear growl buzzer.
Give me a sec. I haven't done voice acting for a while.
Impressive.
That's pretty good, yeah. Excellent. Jamie?
Very different as well. That's good.
Dog.
Specific. I mean, we had one that sounded a bit like a moose, the other one a bit like a dog. So I think it's fine.
Yeah, your intern is going to stop playing up, I think, if he can hear you.
But as always, we need to look at what it is that we're going to be playing for. So going into next episode, we'll be going into next month, which is October, and that's where we want to introduce an entire month of Halloween-y based episodes. So all of the films that will be potentially suggested today. So if the guests win, they have a choice of any of the films that will be hinted at beforehand, and they will all have some spooky theme related to them. So let's start with David. Let's hear the hints for your film.
So I've kind of gone with the idea that obviously this is a family film. I was very tempted to just go in the complete other direction, just to go from something charming like Paddington to something then just completely like scarring or something. But I was like, no, we don't want to go that drastic. But I think when we're talking about kind of things that do scar young kids, it's probably one of the most one of the most scary and like disturbing and well-known children's animated films for just the way that it depicts what's usually quite a sort of quaint and cuddly kind of world. It was in 1978 that this film came out, and also had a very important British icon within acting, which was John Hurt. So that is my suggestion from 1978.
Excellent. So now to hear Jamie, what would you potentially put forward?
I'd go for a Hugh Grant comedy horror from Ken Russell, and the year is 1988.
Interesting. Steph?
I went through a connection of Brendan Gleeson. It is... I'm really trying not to spoil, because everything I say about this, it will be recognized. It definitely is on the year 2002. It was a very small film, but it became a huge hit, and it sort of recreated not just one, but two genres.
Interesting. And finally, to wrap it up, you could have any one of those films, or you could have my film from 1993. Again, this is a family-themed horror-esque film, very much diving straight into the theme of Halloween, with lots of loud, brash characters, some really interesting music, and also very much like Paddington, a very cute, helpful, animated sidekick for our live-action cast. Okay, so those are the films we could be playing for. Now to play the game. David, would you be able to keep score for us, please? Okay. So, in some cases, I will have removed the word bear from the character's name. So, obviously, you can just logically assume that for some of these, bear is going to be in there. But if you think you know the answer, just growl. I'll say who growled first, and we'll get your answer. Are you ready? Okay. The first bear. Boo Boo.
Rawr.
Jamie.
Yogi Bear? I don't.
So I'll be nice. I don't need a specific film in some cases. I just need like a franchise. So so long as you just say Yogi Bear, you are correct. Number 2. Norm.
Rar.
Steph.
Norm of the North.
Norm of the North. A very, very bad animated film about a polar bear.
You'll remember the title, because I've really tried to like really like sink it into my subconscious, like completely disappear. You just brought all the drama back.
I mean, I have to go through that for a daily basis, so welcome to my world. Number 3, Baloo.
Rawr.
David?
I think Steph was just...
I thought it was slightly Jamie, so...
We could say it at the same time and get a draw.
Yeah.
I'm happy for that. So on the count of 3, say what the film is. 3, 2, 1.
Jungle Book.
Yeah. So that's a
I
point
mean, we
each.
could say I say the animated one, and Jamie says the live action.
Yeah, sure, we'll go. That seems like a...
There we go.
Yeah.
Mowgli.
What I should also point out is that some films may appear twice. Okay. Number 4.
Baloo.
Fozzie.
Rawr. Muppets.
Yeah, it's Fozzie Bear, the comedian.
Waka waka.
Number 5. Eleanor.
Rawr?
Steph?
I don't remember if that's her actual name. Is it Brave?
It is indeed Queen Eleanor, who turns into a bear in Brave. Excellent. Number 6. Kevin.
You know, you should put it in the music from Countdown right now.
I could, but unfortunately David hasn't mastered the soundboard yet to do that. I'll give a small hint. I will accept either name that this film has, because it has a different name depending on if it's released in the US or internationally.
Oh, okay.
The final hint, he is a polar bear. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's Zootopia.
Oh God.
So
Lucky,
the mafia possum, it's the largest of his bodyguards.
That was a tricky one.
It was tricky. So I think that leads us nicely into number 7, Ted.
Rawr.
That was definitely Jamie.
Damn it.
Ted, 1 and 2.
Yep. I wasn't going to trick you out with sequel for that one.
Yeah.
Okay, number 8, Archie.
That does ring a bell.
So is this. That's the sound you want to hear. I'll give you a small hint. This is a sequel film.
Sequel?
Yeah.
But so that means the bear was not...
Not in the first
wait.
one.
Oh, is it Rawr?
Steph?
Is it Dr. Dolittle too?
It is indeed Dr. Dolittle 2. It is the focal bear of the film. However, because I gave a hint for that, that's only going to be half a mark.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Number 9.
Bear enough.
And I apologize for pronunciation for this, but Kenai.
Rawr.
Steph?
Brother Bear.
Brother Bear. It is the person who's turned into a bear.
And he becomes a brother.
That happens a lot in Disney films, doesn't it?
Next up, we have Lil Jon.
Rawr.
Oh, Rawr.
That was definitely Steph.
Okay, can I just say the name of the protagonist? Because I know there's like a larger title, but I just don't remember the whole thing.
I mean, it probably falls within franchise rules, so what is it?
Yeah, Robin Hood.
Yep, from that really long-winded title, Robin Hood.
Is it okay? Because I know
It's just the Disney version, which is just called Robin Hood.
Okay,
it's not like Prince of Thieves or Men in Tights or anything like that.
If it was probably made today, it would just be called Hood or something.
Especially considering he's Lil Jon, like Little Wayne. Okay. Are we ready for number 11? Oksana.
Rawr.
Jamie?
This is a total pun. His Dark Materials.
It is not His Dark Materials.
Though that is a TV show, so if you do recommend that film, I think of that next time.
I mean, I did contemplate having TV beers in here as well to have characters like Gentle Ben.
Could you repeat
Also saw from the film His Dark Materials, Golden Compass.
I guess that is the franchise, though, so yeah, either works.
Exactly, yeah. So the name is
read the name again?
Oksana.
Oksana.
It's like that song, Oksana, Oksana.
I'm going to do a countdown for this. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The answer is Borat. It is a bear that... It's a bear that appears in his home country. It's named after his ex-wife, apparently.
Yeah, I remember the stupid joke.
Yeah.
Okay. Are we ready for number 12? Mordu. Aye, that Mordu.
Gotta change the fate of this episode.
I'm going to give a hint. It is a film. Yeah? Jamie?
I don't know, what was the hint going to be? I think.
No, so who just growled?
Jamie. Yeah.
Jamie. So
I was going to, but then you were about to say a hint.
I'll say that. All right, I'll say the hint, and then I'll let you answer. Jamie first. You'll both get the hint.
Okay.
It is a film that's already been said, so you've got like a 1 in 10.
I'm going to say Brave.
Yeah, that's what we're going to say as well.
It is Brave. It is the evil bear. As you were probably going to say that before the hint anyway, I think that's still fair to give the full point for that one. Okay. Number 13. Poe.
Is it Poe?
Poe, yeah.
Not okay.
Roll.
Jamie?
Roll. Kung Fu Panda.
Kung Fu Panda. Master Po Ping, the dragon warrior.
I love how crazy people just look up like row.
Honestly, I was awful at this game last time. I got so confused because we had to say our name before, and I kept getting it wrong.
It's just one sound this time.
So you were going to have a clarification, Steph?
No, it's because I thought you said Poe, but I was needing to confirm because I thought you might have said Boo.
Yeah. Oh, I see, right.
Yeah.
It's Poe like the Teletubby.
Yeah.
Tomato, Winnie the Pooh, Winnie the Poe.
Okay. Also, fun fact, Winnie the Pooh not included in this game in any capacity.
It's Winnie the Poe.
Although I will tell you who is included. Our next entry, Tenderheart.
I think I know what it is. I don't know the name of the thing. Roar?
Steph?
Bear care?
It is not bear care.
Oh, roar.
No. You've lost your chance for the turn. Jamie, would you like to buzz in? Would you like to buzz in, Jamie?
I'm going to roar.
Jamie?
I'm going to say the Care Bears.
Yep.
I think that has to be half a point, though, surely.
I'm giving a full point to Jamie, half a point to Steph.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I'm okay to share like half points. I don't mind.
Yeah.
I mean, I've already made my judgments whether David puts it in the scores.
Yeah. So it's a full point and a half point.
Okay.
Bear cages. Yeah, it sounds like a hospital for bears. I love it.
Oh, in line with like Animal Hospital. Just loads of bears on stretchers with like Okay. We've now come to the last bear on our list. So the final bear you have to identify is Coda.
Roar. I know it. Why do I know it? I'm going to say Grizzly Man.
Is it Grizzly Man? Steph, you look like you were about to growl.
Yeah, rar. It's the little annoying crab thingy from Brother Bear.
It is indeed the cub from Brother Bear, the bear who gains a brother. If Steph were in charge of naming films. Okay, that brings us to the end of the game. So David, who has won?
Well, is it the end because it's 7-all?
Okay. So I'm going to tell you part of a title that has a bear character, and I just want you to tell me who the bear character is. Okay, so it's a bit of a role reversal. Are you ready?
Okay.
And so the same system. Just let me get the buzzer back out. So the part of the film is called Blood and Honey.
Row.
Jamie.
Row. Winnie the Pooh.
It is Winnie the Pooh! Yes, an excellent linking to the end because it is an upcoming horror film, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey.
Yeah, he's now in the public domain, of course.
Yeah. And obviously the trailer has been recently released within the last 2 weeks or so.
Yeah.
So with that, the winner of the end game is Jamie. Congratulations.
Well done, Jamie.
First defeat.
Sorry.
Oh,
I'm
really?
sorry, Your bad
First
cat.
defeat for Stefanos.
Oh, wait,
Yeah.
not quite.
Well, maybe
Endgame.
after a string of wins, I think, anyway.
Endgame specials, let's not forget. Yeah, so congratulations, Jamie. So now you have the choice of 4 films. So you can go with any of the suggestions from any of us, or of course you can go with the film that you would like us to look at. So what would you like us to discuss in the next episode?
I feel that because Bearcat just gave me a step up, I'm going to go with Steph's option.
Okay, so you're going to go with Steph's option. So Steph, give us a little bit of build-up and then tell us what we're discussing in the next episode.
So, like I said, the connection, especially to make it Halloween themed, is a film that Brendan Gleeson was in. He was playing a supporting role to a 2002 film that it is a horror film, but really subverted the genre of digital era. Basically, it was one of the first films ever to be fully shot in digital cameras. And 2, of the zombie genre, and that was directed by Danny Boyle, and it's 28 Days Later.
28 Days Later. An excellent choice to kick off our Halloweeny month.
Yeah, so going down, which I'm not sure if we've gone down the whole sort of zombie route, I guess.
No,
but,
we haven't, for probably obvious reasons for me. But.
Well, yeah, so awesome. So thank you for that suggestion, Stefanos, and Jamie for giving the suggestion over to Stefanos after your win. So yeah, 28 Days Later from 2002 is what we'll be discussing next time. If you want to watch that film, and it's very weird to say this, you can check it out on Disney Plus at the moment as a part of your subscription. Or, of course, you can go rent it from any of the sort of rental services. Or, of course, as we've mentioned at the top of the episode as well, it is available on physical media as well. So go check it out if you want to join in the conversation with us and find out our thoughts and join in this fun chain of movies that we have of late. So yeah, next time, starting off our Halloween month, which we are sort of calling our Halloween horror month, I guess. So yeah, thank you guys for joining us talking about Paddington 2 very much. Yeah, like kind of what I was originally thinking for my suggestion. We're going very opposite to Paddington 2 with 28 Days Later. So very drastically different there. Stefanos, anything to sort of end on? Anything that you're up to? Any projects or where the people can catch you on social media?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Stefan Things. Mainly, I retweet a lot of stuff. Basically, you can tell my whole personality just for the retweets I do. And as I said earlier on the recording, I am planning to revisit the BFI London Film Festival this October. So far, I have 22 films booked. I know myself. I know I'm going to really, really go all the way in. And most likely I'm going to add another 5 films. I'm hoping a lot of good things. This time around, I'm not going to put that much effort on catching up with famous celebrities or filmmakers. I think this time around, I'm just going to like relax and enjoy the films. And I also do think I've been desensitized quite a lot. I think after I've seen 2 different films next to Edgar Wright, I think I'm okay. So yeah, and as for anything else, I am actually working something of my own. I'm working on a script for a while now, and yeah, you know, one of the things of our creatives, we just keep going and going until we actually hit the jackpot through our own creativity. But we'll see. And also, I am actually looking forward for Wonka. I didn't care at all before until Paul King was brought into directing it. And that is the only reason I am going to watch it.
I thought the exact same thing when I was looking at Paul King for the last episode. So yeah, very, very excited for that. And yeah, lots of fun stuff I'm sure to come with all the festivals, etc., which are going to be starting up soon. Jamie, what about yourself? Where can the people find you? What have you got coming up?
People can find me on Twitter at Jamie Milligan, on Instagram at MillySnap, and on Letterboxd, because I'd like more Letterboxd friends, is at Jamie Milligan. So not very inventive with my names. And then, yeah, just writing and just trying to get stuff off the ground, really. It's, yeah, just lots of ideas, really, at the moment.
Earlier, I was coming back from work, and on the radio, they were talking about when they have like writers' retreats for song makers, for like people who sing and stuff like that. And I was just like, we need this for like film or something, from what you 2 guys have just said. It's like where creatives get together. I don't know, maybe with film and TV, it's been more of an isolated experience. You wouldn't collaborate as much, but still, it's a nice chance to go away and, you know, the hills, or, you know, go to a nice holiday retreat for a while and get your head down, get some the creative juices flowing. But yeah, it's awesome to have so many of our guests, you know, involved in that creative process as well. I know that, and hopefully we get to see some of these projects very soon for ourselves as well. You mentioned Letterboxd. I don't think it's been mentioned yet, but recently Well Good Movies has set up a Letterboxd. So yeah, follow Jamie, follow us as well. I know Stefanos as well, you're on there, especially because if you want to actually get an up-to-date version of the Movie Vault list, Well Good Movies has 2 lists on there. One is covering all the films that we've talked about specifically or reviewed, so films that might have not gone into the vault, or films that were sort of like talked about like in an episode of like 3 films, etc. And you can just see the Movie Vault list on there as well, so a very good chance to see all of that. So yeah, we got some exciting projects on the way now as we enter our last segment of the year now. We've got our Halloween horror month now is upcoming, which will now start with 28 days later. And yeah, that entire month is dedicated to Halloween. Lots of fun, creepy stuff coming up there. Lots of like antics. Our end games are always fun. The film discussions and lots of fantastic guests we got coming up there as well. So keep peeled for that. And please do, yes, follow us. Like everything on social media. It's all much appreciated. Craig, anything lastly from yourself? I know we got 1 or 2 other announcements to tease.
Yeah, so no jokes from me this time, just a couple of announcements. One, personal life. So for those of you who don't really pay attention to the podcast, I'm a debater, and on the weekend of the 23rd and 24th of September, I will be running a pop culture themed tournament. So if you enjoy my opinions on films, TV, whenever it comes up, you get to see what kind of topics I get to set people in the Pop Culture Grand Prix 2. I'm very much looking forward to it, and I'm hoping to get some incredibly cursed ideas past my fellow chief adjudicators. Also, just in terms of the podcast, keep a lookout for more updates on this, but we are currently planning and producing the next Endgame special. So coming off of the heels of our last successful series, which ended in a climactic Champions Cut edition, we're looking to get some more Endgame specials off the ground again, and we'll be looking to do one before the end of the year. So once we have more information, we'll feed that out to you gently and surely, like a good marketing team would do.
Lots more fun buzzers to come, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, I'm going to find absolutely weird things for people to do.
I think Jamie's probably been through, like, him and Reese maybe this year have gone through. I think he had to do like a suggestive noise for that innuendo one and then also say his name. I think Jamie's up there with having to do the weird kind of like a bear growl and his name. You know, it's very weird.
Yeah, please don't use that as a reason to discourage coming on again in future.
You just got to see what comes up next time, isn't it? It'll be both. You have to say your name in bear. So, well, thank you, Stefanos and Jamie, for joining us. It's been fantastic talking about Paddington 2. And yes, we hope to have you both come back in the future. And for everyone at home as well, make sure you go check out 28 Days Later. As I mentioned, on Disney Plus, you can rent it, buy it, and join in our fun conversation. So thank you once again, everyone, and we'll catch you for Halloween. Woo! Bye-bye.
Bye.
Roar. Roar.
See you soon. Bye. Bye.
To keep up with the latest episodes of Well Good Movies, you can listen to us on all your usual podcast outlets, including Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and more. Don't forget to follow us, subscribe, and rate us where you can to keep our podcast growing. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Well Good Movies to keep up with the latest news and highlights from all our episodes, as well as tell us what movies you want to be discussed in the future. And if all of that isn't enough, you can also find us at our website, freshtakehub.com/wellgoodmovies, where you can catch all our episodes along with videos and articles deep diving into the worlds of film and television. So what are you waiting for? Go check out the film we'll be discussing in next time's episode.